did this. I said, how long until we have the more powerful not caring? How long will we have the more powerful not caring about the less powerful? How long will we have disinformation troubling our citizens and throwing right action off her game? How long before there will be no oligarchies? How long will power stop intoxicating human beings? How long will hate bond people together? How long will the everyday person be without a sense of agency and being able to affect their society? How long will I deal with depression? How long will I deal with physical pain? How long will I be pulled aside by petty temptations? How long will I have such a struggle to pray and to pray and to believe? How long? How long? Have you ever wondered how long about those things? What do you want to know how long about? What is our how long, O Lord? You know, I was talking to a man in his late 20s, and he wanted to know how long, basically. He was, in terms of a graph, going down and to the right. He was depressed over the state of the world's problems. Here is a young man depressed over the state of the world's problems that he has to live in. He was depressed over the state of our states. I felt for him. And then I wondered, in our quote-unquote maturity, like mine, have we become just more accustomed to all this wrong and more accepting of it than he has? And we shrug, well, that's the way it is. Oh, for the spirit of Habakkuk and Jeremiah. Oh, for the spirit of Habakkuk and Jeremiah. May it be flamed in this young adult and all of us. And so I said, it is good for Habakkuk to see and to feel the noxiousness of his world. It's good for Habakkuk to pray about what he sees. And it's good for Habakkuk to pray with bare-knuckled honesty about these things. And it's also good for us to see it and not shrug. Preserve us from shrugging. You wouldn't want to not see it and be a head in the sand people, spineless spiritually and morally. You wouldn't want to not pray honestly about it. For if you didn't pray, and didn't pray honestly, or if you turned your back on God, you have life not the same as it was, but worse than it is. It certainly does not help not to pray for the righting of our society's boat. Listen, that you see sin in and around you, get this, is a work of God. And that you wanted God's help for this is the work of God in you. So if you're agonizing, thank God that He's at work in you. God, in our frustrations, feels our aspirations and is drawn to our aspirations and to us. His heart moves towards us. The fact that we have a sense of being disconcerted and confounded is evidence of the sensitivity and nobleness worked by God in you and me and us. Thanks be to God for His agony. Where are you, O God? Well, I'm in that cry right there. Still, what is the answer God gives to Habakkuk's and our questions? He had prayed for an answer, and he was actually frustrated that an answer didn't come, but one eventually did come. It wasn't what he expected. Certainly not. I remember a few years ago, there was a search for an autistic boy, I don't know, maybe about 10 or so over, I think, near Ocala. And people were searching, and it went on for several days. And I think his name was Tom, and so the searchers were going through the woods. And on the third day, a searcher went to a part of the woods that hadn't been explored. And of course, when you're out there, you're yelling, "Tom, Tom, Tom." But this guy, when he went into an unexplored portion of the woods, yelled out, "Tom," at one point, and he got something back. "What? Tom, what?" Well, when I heard that, I didn't expect that. I expected if you said Tom, you'd go, "Here I am, help me, oh God, you found me, thank you." But he said, "What?" "Tom, what?" "Jeff, what?" Well, I didn't see that answer coming. And the answer from God that God gives to Habakkuk, he didn't see coming either. It is almost so preposterous, and God warns him of such that you're not going to believe this. He warns him. It is so out there that I'm surprised that Habakkuk doesn't keel over. God said that he was going to correct the bad faith actors in Israel with the mongrel butcher hordes from Babylon. In other words, he was going to deal with evil by bringing against it extreme evil. Can you do that, God? The answer is such that it prompts a whole new question from Habakkuk. Quote, "Why do you, with your eyes too pure to behold evil, look at the treacherous and are silent when the wicked swallow those more righteous than they? Is this going to keep on forever?" Verse 13, verse 17. So the question was, how long do I have to keep praying and you don't do anything about the treacherous? And now he's going, how long do we have to deal with your answer for how you're dealing with the treacherous? Not only how long will you let the wicked prosper and the vulnerable suffer, but how long will you, O God, do zigzag things that have the wicked of Israel fall before the more wicked of Babylon? Baseball fans, you'll know this, but when you're picking who's up first and who's up second, you can throw a bat and the team captain grabs it. And then the next person goes like this, and the next person goes like this, but what you want to get is the last one where you can cap the top. And he's going, how long, oh God, are we going to go like this with you and the wicked? When is it going to be capped at the top? When will you resolve turbulence into shalom? And that question is preambled again about God, you're holy. How can you do such an unholy type of thing? Do you have room in your imagination for God doing unholy types of things? It would be like having a white sofa and God having a white sofa and he does his black shoe polishing on top of it. You say, that doesn't make sense. You're white. You don't do black shoe polish on your white sofa. It would be like us finding that God raised up drug cartels to punish modern America. Got any room for that one? I don't. But it seems to be what he's saying when he says, I'm bringing Babylon against Israel. It would be like seeing Mother Teresa in her habit, paying black market arms dealers to sort out her problems. Can you hold that in your brain? It's an answer of extreme dissonance. Is there room in your Christian experience for extreme dissonance with God? That God can be that way is plainly discomforting. But that's not all that's discomforting. Here's some more discomfort, just in case you're needing a little more. The passage says, you reap what you sow. Not those exact words, but he says, you reap what you sow. Agonize that it isn't God behind this as much as it is you behind this. You're the ones who brought Babylon. You brought this on yourselves. It is as if God said, if it's violence you want, violence you'll get. Sin piles up until it crashes down on its own. That's just a principle about sin. No bad deed goes unrecompensed. Jeremiah said in 2:19, your wickedness will punish you. God's good world is meant to come about by following his values and the light on the path, meaning justice and the Ten Commandments, meaning Jeremiah 22 and the two greatest commandments, the Good Samaritan story, and all of that. And when we disregard that, have you ever disregarded it? When we disregard that, an uncivil, broken life results. A broken society results. Now we're told by Peter in his letter in the New Testament that God, when he tarries, is giving repentance a chance. But as long as his patience is there and people don't respond, then there is a mess and more mess and more mess, and it is our fault. Agonize we should over each of our parts in the delay of shalom and fostering unshalom. And we could even break this down into our personal accountability by going for the almost silly for each of us. Almost silly. It's the every time you took a bigger portion of a cake for yourself, or every time you took a better seat for yourself, every time you stood down before falsehood, every time you looked at porn, every time you didn't manage your budget so that there were alms left for the poor, every time you became a part of the pile of evil that collapses upon humanity. Just because you didn't do it in reaction doesn't mean you didn't do it. And if you didn't proactively fight against evil, then you've not fought against evil. So I want you to hear this. Hear it clear. Sin has its own judgment, and God also judges sin. It's discomforting. We're also discomforted by God's seeming use of such an unholy means. I want a God of love, don't you? I heard this word week of a church called the Church of Gentle Springs. That's what we want. That's what I want. And that is indeed what God gives. But we maintain that, God, you can't be serious to be so ungentle, even appalling. You can't do that. But he says, I can be in the Church of the Gentle Springs and also the one who calls Babylon to heel. And we say, no, you can't. You got to be in the Gentle Springs, not in the Babylon. I'm kind of reminded when we say, God, you can't do that, of Red Skelton. Somebody said to Red Skelton, then I'm not your friend. And he retorted, don't tell me who my friends are. And God says, don't tell me, you and me, don't tell him what he can use and not use. You and I may not understand it, which is one thing. But I can, in my mystery, says God, do a judging and yet merciful work at the same time, using even the wicked, even repurposing the evil. So God's answer is discomforting, buffeting, stinging, off-putting, appalling. Hey, but you know, it's also comforting. It's also comforting in three ways. I said, sin has its own judgment, and God also judges sin. Now there is this. This number one is that is a comfort. That sin doesn't just get to go unchecked like a forest fire, but burns itself out. And that God does judge it. He does not ignore it. Every injustice, he will address. Thanks be to God. And second comfort, God's answer is comforting. The author of Hebrews would say, because God chastens those he loves. Ignoring our launch into sin would be a terrible disinterest rejection. If I were a parent watching a son do that, it would be a terrible disinterest and rejection. But if God did not love us, he would not correct us. But he does love us, so he does correct us. And I say this carefully, sometimes the hard times that come into our life is God's disruption so that we might see what course correction we need. The comfort is God will adjust us and use difficulties even to adjust us. And it's comforting, number 3, because God clearly was and is at work. He said, "Where are you, O God?" And all the while God was at work, answering before Habakkuk had even asked. John 5:17 says, "My Father is at work, and I am at work." And we need to take that to bank. Whenever you think, where is God? He's not here. He's not at work. My Father is always at work. I am always at work. So when we read what comes across our newspaper, our news TV, our news feeds, how there's this famine, this incursion, this economic uptick, this broken verdict, guess what? Answer, God is at work. Don't say he's not at work. You may not like how he's at work, but don't say he's not at work. Hear this clearly. There is no event in human history that is to be understood as completely divorced from God's lordly action and will. Let me say that again. There is no event in human history that is to be understood as completely divorced from God's lordly action and will. We may not understand it, but there is no blade of grass that God does not claim as his, and there is no event in history that is not under his sovereign will. Here's the hymn. Does his tarrying cause you to wonder? Does it seem he's forgotten his own? His promise is true. He's coming for you. God is still on his throne. So God may exile or destroy a nation, and we do not understand that. And God may use 30 pieces of silver and a Judas, and we don't understand that. He may use a perverted high priest and a violent mob, and we don't understand that. He may use a Roman criminal cross and a murder injustice against an innocent man. He may use his only son's blood dripping from a cross to bring about his justice and love. Don't say what God can and cannot do. God will work his love and justice out. And we cry, how long? Well, until we all hear him on the cross cry, it is finished. The word of God. We pray.